Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to the beginner's guide. Um, Coda, as a character, the name Coda is basically I believe, the last piece of a written work, kind of like an epilogue. Um, Maybe it goes epilogue then Coda, or maybe is specifically for music. But there is a last piece of a piece of art that the word coda means. So there might be a hint in that name as far as all of that. But Coda as an actual person has been shown as being very obsessive, very isolated, um, capable of not really making what you would call a game, but more just asset flip things or uh, experiments that you would do at a game jam without really finishing anything or having the core concepts of what would make a game uh, acceptable amongst your peers. Uh, it's really more a crazy person flinging poo at the wall than it is an artist painting a painting. And there is this default assumption that I think people have been taught through TV and movies that if somebody is crazy, that they are often completely incapable of doing a percentage of what normal people would do. Um, when that's just not true. You can be very capable, but there can still be a major problem, whether it's just obsession or depression, that is stopping you from getting over that finish line and making a final product. And that's definitely what we're being shown in these games. But yeah, for what's being shown, if these are real games made by a real person, I cannot believe for a second that his game developing peers or people he would wish to be his peers in game development would accept him. In the programming language, we would call them script kiddies, at least they used to be called that. People that can just go online and look up answers to specific questions to copy and paste code. Um, Generally speaking, if you are script kidding a lot, which in all fairness, even the highest pros in IT and programming often are going online and learning from other people's experiences and just copying and pasting the answers. But when you are at that low level, you barely understand the code at all, and you're not really trying to learn the code, you're just trying to get a final quick outcome to feel like you've accomplished something, and you're inherently never thinking about the higher levels of like copyright. Is the code that you're finding open source in which it can be used for commercial purposes, or is it code that can only be used for private or educational reasons, or is it completely proprietary and closed? You wouldn't even understand what that means and why it might even be important to understand whether you have legal rights, or at least forget legal rights, at least the moral permission from the creators to use that code. Um, you're only going to just be scraping the surface of making a game. That's really where I feel Coda still is. Like, each of these games are theoretically going to be longer and more complicated, but it just feels like it's just more asset flipping. Now, inherently here, this does not look like a Source Engine game. It would take a lot more work, certainly, to make a Source Engine game, to have these jagged walls and footprints in the snow and snow textures, ambient noise, a skybox that almost seems like it's moving, but I'm not sure it actually is, trees on the edges. This is the beginning of potentially something here.
To me, this environment is meant to represent Coda's puzzle, with the two doors on either side and a dark transitional space between.
So, you have a much nicer house here. with much more assets that are flipped. But it takes more time with each object. It's possible you can buy a pre-made, messed up bookshelf that has all the books on it, but it's also very possible that you'd have to potentially buy each one of these books or get them for free on an asset store and then place them manually. And then it looks like there's a well-lit door over there. So let's just do the normal thing. There we have the same guys with the head talking. Much nicer looking room. It's interesting how this entire house is something that you can look in from the outside without having to. It says clean on one side, clean on the other. You can't open this door. Yeah, it's interesting how you can just look in without having to actually enter.
Just so you're aware, nothing will happen up here until you've been inside the house.
The fact that the game and the narrator just has to really explain everything to you. And see, once again, this feels like the same textures and the same doors before, so it almost screams that this almost has to be a Source Engine game, and this is just an example of perhaps if you started to get good at a Source Engine game, this is what it might look like. Inherently, because not enough people use the Source Engine, there's just not enough polish to really show what it can do compared to something like the Unreal Engine. Notice how it closed and it made the closing sound, then I turned around and it showed the closing. There are still things missing here, for sure, but this does imply, if Coda is real, that he is in a different place in his life, both mentally and probably physically. This is an interesting way to do kind of a bar countertop kitchen island. Yeah, you're getting into bathrooms here that don't quite look like they'd be from the United States at this rate. But that could very well just be asset flipping, more than indicating any secret. Noticing in this place, it looks like there's several places where you could clean, like make the bed, clean the spilled drink, straighten the rug. Noticeably also, this bed is a bed for two that looks slept well enough in both sides that it feels like there might actually be two people involved. Definitely does not feel like this would be a child's room or a child's bed. This is inherently a problem with a lot of games, though, is once you start getting really up close to the books, they're really blurry. Alright. So, to escape the prison, you had to do several things. And can I remember them? First thing was click on the table. And clicking on the table doesn't seem to be doing anything. The second thing would have been to turn on and off the floor lamps. No, it wouldn't have been. That wasn't the second step. Touching the shelves. The elements here to escape the prison are the same. So, if there were any achievements in this game, which I don't think there are, you'd almost assume there would be an achievement for trying to do all of that. Well, my goodness, I'm glad you, as all heck, you all showed up. thought you might be having to clean this entire house by myself, and right miserable that would have
You'll
been.
notice that the quality of the art is a step up from previous games, including this new and improved chat system, which he started using from this point on.
Everyone
From
knows.
here on out, he begins putting much more effort into the visual polish of his work, and this particular game took 2 months to create as a result.
Everyone knows lonesome hands make lousy homes. Lousy homes make lousy homeowners. Are we cleaning this whole place, I guess is the question. That's the story, little one. Oh, don't you worry now. We'll be through this mess in no time. I promise you'll wish there was more. Why don't I finish up here? In the meantime, could you please clear the table? Alright. 2 months to effectively asset flip a game like this. Doesn't scream great productivity, particularly if this isn't anywhere close to your first game, which it isn't. And that just boils back down to my feeling that he didn't really learn. Much nicer. There's the table I want to see. Now would you please run into the bedroom and make the bed? Even here, I don't know if you're really learning from this, because having a prompt hover over a bed and then pressing the use button to make the bed, while you're in there, why don't you straighten out the rug a bit? All the little details matter. This isn't really an interactive gameplay action. I took several pumps. Do you enjoy being a house cleaner? How'd you end up doing this job? It's been a long time since I've seen a house this messy. Let's ask a question. Questions give you more information in video games, so obviously you'd want to ask that. And emotional questions about do you enjoy being a house cleaner probably doesn't give you as much information in a video game as you'd want to know. Although, in this case, it might be smarter to ask, do you enjoy being a house cleaner? So let's ask that. Well, I don't enjoy it so much as I need it. While I'm working, I feel a kind of calm that rests in the pit of my ribcage. My soul just can't be soothed in any other way, it seems. Well, I guess that's all that matters. Oh, that and a tidy couch. Would you straighten the pillows on the sofa out here? So if this is supposed to represent Coda, then it might be an indication here that Coda has a real-world job of being a house cleaner as a way of addressing a OCD part of his brain. Certainly, I could see that. Although, if you were obsessive, you'd have to kind of be obsessive and not so germophobic that you would be paralyzed when trying to clean houses. And even being OCD and being a house cleaner doesn't really work great, because at a certain point, being too OCD about house cleaning will cause you to just rearrange the sofa, then rearrange the sofa again, then rearrange the sofa again, then rearrange it, and just never get out of that habit or that cycle. Oh dear, looks like someone spilled a drink over by the couch. Maybe mop that up as well as you're over here. Yeah. If you wanted to turn this into more of a game, you would have the player hold down the button, maybe put a meter where you try to get a moving needle to end in the very middle, or maybe get some QuickTime event buttons. QuickTime events are about the bare minimum of game development to have actual gameplay. But just walking to a place and hitting A is not really a game. I feel compelled to share an incredibly cheesy personal insight. You okay with that? make it especially cheesy. Yeah, I'll try to get by. Do you absolutely have to? Could certainly also have cutscenes if the action is important and you want to focus on the action and not have an actual game. Let's say make it especially cheesy. ... No. No, it was stupid. Sorry. Never mind. Hey, those dishes need to be washed. Why don't you come do that? Seems like he's the boss. He's just telling me to do everything. But yeah, there's no effort here. Last I checked, the tub needed cleaning. How about you scrub it down best as you can? No need to be perfect, well, just human. There's no animations here. There's no flowing water. There's no attempt at programming water physics. I don't know if the Source engine could really even do water physics that well. There is just things in one position being magically teleported into places in another position. And effectively, if you're doing that in the Source engine, that's very possibly less programming as it is more just drag and dropping items. Yeah, I suppose tubs need to be scrubbed. That on occasion, although I don't think this one looks particularly dirty, but maybe it is. Okay, it looks a lot cleaner now. Are there still books scattered on the floor in the bedroom? If so, would you please put them back on the shelf? Like, inherently, this feels like if this was the first game, you could have a message around this. But then to imply that all the previous games had a message, that's pretty crazy. To indicate that the player should have played multiple games before this point. Perfect. Now then, how about you come and clear the dishes off the table?
This house cleaning level almost feels like cleansing. It's the moment after a particularly difficult or traumatic experience where you just need to let it sit and digest inside of you, and eventually cohere into something meaningful.
The dishes are back on the table. House cleaning is so difficult, how do you do it? All houses this easy to clean. Do these chores ever end? Let me ask that question. Darling, let me tell you something. Whatever work you do, you have absolutely got to own it, otherwise it owns you. So why don't we be with the task at hand and leave the future chores to future you? Present you wants...
Coda really liked this game. Of all of his work, actually, this was the only one that he called me up to ask me to come over and look at it. This was during a period of a few months where he was like grossly happy all the time. Just walked around with a constant smile on his face.
Yeah, that could be bipolarness, certainly. If you have like several months or weeks of manic episodes when you're super happy, and then several weeks or months of depression, that's bipolar. Mania, which is not a phrase that people use in layman's terms very often, means when you're unnaturally chemically happy because of a brain disorder. It's not wrong to be happy, and it's not unnormal to be happy, but it is unnormal to be happy for no reason for a very long time. That's mania at that point. And mania can lead to as many problems as depression can. Present you wants to smooth out the rug in the bedroom, believe it or not. Trust me on this one. Of course, instead of trying to diagnose Coda, I could suggest that maybe he was just normally happy because something in his life is causing him to be normally happy. Perhaps he had found a girlfriend or a wife, or just changed his lifestyle situation. Looks like the tub has gotten really dirty. Would you mind tidying it up a bit? See, I feel like this is, if Coda is happy about this, it might be that this is just a better version of the Prisoner episode. Earlier when I said I really cheesy thought I was going to say, it occurs to me that one's house is a lot like one's soul. You take care of it and it takes care of you. Don't know why I felt so weird about saying that. I get it, that's a weird thing to say to someone you just met. Yeah, you're right, that's pretty cheesy. But there's a bit of truth in it, no. Yeah, there's a certain level of truth to it. You know, if you're happy mentally and your mental house is cleaned and organized, you tend to have the desire to live in a cleaned and organized house fairly often. Whether or not you can actually achieve that is often the question, and usually to be happy you're engaging in a lot of activities outside of the house with other people. At a certain level, there's a danger in saying, if I just get my house clean and I just live in this perfectly clean environment all by myself and alone, I'll be happy, because that's not likely to happen. Humans are designed to really need to interact with other humans. ... Anyway, so, housekeeping. Let's keep doing this. Books. Would you please clean up the books? Thanks. If there's a way to escape this place, I feel like you're I'm not really being shown the solution. And this is starting to feel a lot like one of the Star Trek Next Generation episodes where a character's in a dream and they keep doing things, and then when they turn around and look, the things are undone. Like the person's a ghost or in a hallucination or a dream. Oh goodness, those pillows on the couch are a real mess.
I'm glad he found some peace.
Yeah. Often, suicidal people are very happy right before they decide to kill themselves. It's worth mentioning that also. So, seeing the pattern of these Coda games before this point and seeing this game would put some concern in me for Coda's mental health. Okay. Question.
But, of
Did
course,
you enjoy
it
this?
can't last. The music stops, your companion is gone, it's time to leave. The door at the top of the hill is now open as well. Again, you can't stay in the dark space for too long. You just can't. You have to keep moving. It's how you stay alive.
And see, it's stopping just so abruptly like that. Definitely feels more like it's the narrator telling you that you have to move on than it was Coda telling you it's time to move on. Because if Coda really was having this manic episode or just being very happy, why end your game like that? And if we're to take the narrator's interpretation of what this game is and what the doors are, of him feeling a feeling or a thought and then just being completely done with it, why would you let go of that idea, of that happiness? Why would you make a door? Why would you make the puzzle? Why would you assume that it has to go further? The door puzzles aren't even here in this case. It's just going straight to the lamppost. Yeah, this back part of the game just does not match what Coda is offering inside that room. It doesn't make logical sense, although I kind of
Which
also...
is the whole point of the puzzle doors, right? That sooner or later you have to pick up and move.
There is
I really
no
thought
darkness.
that was the point of it.
Items
This
you love
one gets a
at
bit
members
goofy.
only prices. Why did you come here today? Was it to improve your life? Was it to get a better job? Was it to make your relationships more meaningful? No. You came here to become perfect. This workshop is going to teach you how to be perfect. I want your friends, the people in your life, to look at you and think, wow, this person is a better human being than I am right now. Who do you think about that way in your own life? Who do you know who is so well developed as a person that they can make your feelings disgusted with you feel disgusted with yourself, compared to whom you feel selfish, ungrateful, and tend to make you into that person? Perfection is within your grasp, and the question is, how do we do it? But how do we do it effortlessly? This is
About
easy.
halfway through the
It's
game,
so easy.
the perspective shifts.
It's so easy. Being perfect is effortless. So this almost...
as the teacher, and suddenly you discover that your teacher is just as bigoted and afraid as you are. Oh, and also you can move around the classroom now.
So this feels just like a joke experience, really. That does not really connect to the previous game at all. And see, if there were prompts at a game jam that led you to make a game like this, that would kind of make a lot of sense. You can't walk up the stairs, though. Now we can see the lamppost. Yeah. It feels like you would make this either as a joke, which Coda has not been really established as a person who can make jokes, or as a game prompt from a game jam that had to have the world ending or a black hole or something in it, or a school in it. At a certain point, it almost feels like this might have been the beginning of where Coda is heading towards going to college or going into a programming school. Notice how this is just completely misplaced and not lined up. Same is true over here. I could see perhaps some happiness of moving out of a maybe abusive house and going to a dorm in a college, which almost lets you excuse all the previous Coda games as the efforts of just an emotionally disturbed teenager, which at a certain level, if this is somewhere near the beginning of his college years, he might be getting close enough to actually being a reasonable game developer. There's still obviously just a ton of assets being flipped in this. This is the key, how I achieve it with no effort. The only way to work, I told an old lady to start contributing to society. Kids should not follow their dreams. I feel like it's pointing me to picking number 1. So let's go with number 2. On the way to work, I told an elderly person to start contributing to society. Interesting. Interesting that the color is all messed up like that. Well, let me tell you right now, if it isn't effortless, then it's not the right answer. I still love you. It's just first. It's just that you make me feel cold on the inside. Being alone must be awful. Let's go with 3. Being alone must be awful. These all feel like these are negative responses. Thank goodness all of you perceive me as being wise and intelligent. Drinking is not hurting my life. Interesting, throwing in drinking. If you are torturing yourself, trying to find the right solutions for your life, you're not doing it right. Now 3 is lit up, so let's stick with 3. This almost feels like a puzzle. And that almost feels like a game. There were the whole Telltale series of games where you picked 3 different lines of dialogue, or chose not to speak at all, which gave you a 4th option. Unfortunately, in actually picking the lines of dialogue, it really didn't ever change much of the outcome. It might be more interesting to have dialogue puzzles in a game that actually mattered, and you had to potentially die and replay sections to find the right conversation. That being said, even when there are situations like that, you almost never are lethally punished for getting the wrong conversation, and then instead are just rewarded with some small bonus by getting the right conversation. It's kind of hard to see the black on black, so like the smartest thing potentially to do here would be to try and find as much white background as you can find, which is probably about here, and not even look that way. Do you understand that you won't be happy until you love me? This is for you. And that sounds very abusive. Seeking out only one thing, what is the easiest, simplest path forward? Ooh, I'm a developer. I'm developing assist. Gross. None of these are particularly the right response, in my opinion, but I guess we're just supposed to go with yellow. Haha, just kidding. Anyone want to do some ecstasy after this? There's no truth. There is no path. I think that's probably the case. When we talk, this guy's not jumping around like before. What if I'm not a good teacher? Do what is easiest, do what is simplest, feel what is true. Huh. Number 3 is holy poop, something is coming out of the back of the room, look out. Let's go with that one. Nothing, no one. It's coming for you, it's going to destroy you. Everyone run, run. Let's just go with that one.
I felt pretty hard for this one. I feel like it's one of the most relatable experiences that you can have. To assume that some other person is perfect and totally fulfilled in every way, and completely miss all of the little flaws that make them painfully human. I think about this game a lot these days.
You definitely don't even get to choose like a ending there so much as far as clicking perfect. Again though, even now, these aren't games. They're not even really game jam games. They're little avant-garde art abstract pieces. Not even good enough art that you would really want to show off. I couldn't imagine even a local museum wanting to have a collection of these games in some kind of digital library for people to look at. It just doesn't scream of being relevant or really having a message to say. Here we just have the narrator continuously implying that there is a message when I really don't think this is. Unfortunately, this is potentially setting me up as a critic to say something incredibly cruel and mean, which is that if Coda did kill himself, and this is what he has to show for his life, he's got nothing to show for his life. He didn't accomplish anything. I'm not going to sit here and say I would have encouraged somebody to kill themselves, or that I could ever say that on YouTube, even if I believed it. But this is hardly impactful creation or contributing to society. And this is coming from a video game critic who probably doesn't contribute much to society either. But it's just not anything great. And I don't think I would be swayed by an argument that Coda's impact on the narrator's life is that big or impactful either. It maybe led the writer of the Stanley Parable to write the Stanley Parable by following and being friends with Coda. Certainly anything that actually happened in the writer of the Stanley Parable's life might affect that. But if you were reading a autobiography from, say, Leonardo da Vinci, and in the autobiography he for some reason was obsessed about talking about his best friend who never accomplished anything, and his best friend who did a whole bunch of paintings that were awful and never sold and never lasted the time, or got bought and put in museums, or had any relevancy at all. It would be silly to assume that that influence really was the influence that would have led Leonardo da Vinci to create all of the things he created. Perhaps behind every great man there is a great failure, and that would be an interesting argument. People who hang out with people that are way worse than them, and that you can set your own yardstick against and feel superior to, or feel more protective of, even if you are great friends with that person. Just having a friend who's slightly stupider, slightly worse at everything than you, I bet a lot of people would enjoy that and maybe even benefit from that. But I don't think that would be a weird transference, certainly, to say anything great from the creator of the Stanley Parable, the writer of the Stanley Parable, came from his knowing of Coda. Yeah. There's a big difference, certainly, between a writer observing someone else and using them as the beginning of a subject or the beginning of a character, and then that someone else really being the person that embodies the character and in a way would and could have only been that character. So if we found out, for instance, that Coda worked a go-nowhere job and was very similar to the character Stanley, there's plenty of Stanleys out there in the world. Unfortunately, I guess we're still stuck speculating, and the levels and the chapters are moving a little bit slower. It's a little shocking that this game has even made it to chapter 12. I feel like we probably are getting fairly close to the end, though, and that we won't see much more. And I'll be more than happy to be done with this. I don't get the whole idea of being able to skip levels and restart levels either for such a short game. Anyways, that's going to be it for this recording. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want to further follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below. And if you want to support me further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and get me a game off my wishlist. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.